the ID you have on your square there. If you could just give me your full name and tell me who you're representing here today, whether you're the applicant, owner, someone else connected to the project, a neighboring property owner, or representative from the community council, or someone else involved with the project in some way. So I'll start with Daniel's iPad. Daniel, if you could unmute.
Yes, this is Daniel Weinstein. I'm an adjacent property owner at 384 Baum Street, Unit 301.
Okay. Is Weinstein Weinstein?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Great. Welcome.
Thank you.
And then we have Mark Edwards.
Yes, I am also an adjacent property owner at 373 Oregon Street.
Okay. Great. Welcome. I have someone under Lamia or Lamia.
Correct, yes. My name is Lamia Albuni, and I'm under Michael McIntyre Architects of the property.
Okay. You spell your last name for me?
Albuni, Albunni.
Okay, great. Welcome. So we have Stan Messerly here.
Yes, my name is Stan Messerly, engineer for the applicant.
Okay, welcome. Matt Lascheid from the City Planning Department. Welcome, Matt.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Strickey. Hi, everybody.
And Stephen Vogel.
I'm Steve Vogel, and I'm representing the Mount Adams Civic Association.
Great. Welcome, Mr. Vogel. Is it Aries?
Aristotle Economon. I'm the applicant.
Okay. Great. Welcome. Steve Ullman.
Steve Ullman, I'm with Michael McIntyre Architects, representing the applicant.
Welcome. Looks like two people under Athena Economon.
Yeah, hi, my name's Athena Economon. This is my sister Anna Economon, and we are owners of the property. Hi.
Hi, welcome. And Brian Raymond.
Brian Raymond, representing Michael McIntyre Architects, representing the owner and applicant.
Welcome. Someone else under MMA admin.
Would be me, Michael McIntyre, representing the applicant.
Michael McIntyre.
Turf, yes, the architects.
Okay, great. Welcome. All right, we also have Action Tucker here, who's from the City Law Department. He's just observing today. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I need to read through our hearing script, which is just going to cover the procedure for the hearing, and then we can begin. So this is the April 23rd, 2025 session of the Zoning Hearing Examiner docket. Again, my name is David Starkey. I'll be presiding over the hearing today. The case before us is case number ZH20250034. That is 375, 385, and 387 Oregon Street. The purpose of this hearing is to allow applicants and any other parties to testify and to offer and refute evidence and testimony. This hearing will follow the rules found in the zoning code and the supplemental rules of the Zoning Hearing Examiner. All testimony and evidence that an applicant or any other party wishes to offer must be presented at this hearing, unless there's been some written correspondence submitted prior to this hearing. The hearing will proceed as follows. The applicant, the applicant's attorney, or the applicant's agent will first present the applicant's case. So for our purposes here today, everyone with the applicant team and the owners will have an opportunity to provide testimony during this time. It's really up to all of you how you want to orient that presentation. One of you can speak, all of you can speak. I'm pretty liberal on how you want to orient that, but that'll be your opportunity to tell me about the project, the relief that you're requesting, and why you think that relief is appropriate and should be granted. I'll then move over to the public. Anyone who's here from the public will then have an opportunity to speak. That includes the neighboring property owners and the representative from the Mount Adams Civic Association. I'll allow the planning department to provide any testimony in addition to the staff report that they produced. I'll then turn back to the applicant team. In the event that any party testifies or offers argument in opposition to this application, the applicant will have an opportunity to respond to that testimony that was provided in opposition. And then finally, the applicant will have an opportunity to make any closing statements. After all presentations have been made, I will close the hearing, Decisions may be expected within 2 weeks. I may limit or exclude any testimony that I deem irrelevant or outside the scope of the application being considered. I may interrupt any speaker to ask questions or to make any comments. In the event of any technical difficulties with the Zoom technology, I'll do my best to troubleshoot those issues on the fly. To the extent there's some defect that prevents us from meaningfully going forward with this hearing, I may continue or postpone the hearing at my discretion. Okay. The last thing I need to do before we begin is to swear in all of our witnesses. So if you intend on providing any testimony here today, making any comments, asking any questions, really doing anything other than just strictly observing, then the zoning code requires that I swear you in. So if that's you and you know you'd like to provide some testimony here today, I'm going to go ahead and have you unmute now. I'm going to swear you in collectively. If you're not certain, you don't have to be sworn in. I can swear you in later, but if you know now that you'd like to provide some testimony, please go ahead and take yourself off of mute now and raise your right hand. I'll need everyone to answer out loud. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
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 Mr. Weinstein, if I could just have you jump off mute.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Thanks, everyone. Who's going to be taking the lead here on the applicant's presentation?
I can sort of start us off here. And really, I'm just going to introduce Eris Kahneman, and his daughters are going to speak first today, and then we'll take you through a really brief document to give an outline of the project. So, Eris?
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm Eris Kahneman. My daughters and I own the property a couple of years ago. I'll just give you a little background. Summer internships at Procter & Gamble. They said, wow, we want to live in Cincinnati. We want to go to work for these guys in 2 years, graduate. So we started looking around Cincinnati, and they said, wow, Mount Adams would be a great place to live. So we looked around. We didn't see much that was super nice or new or, suitable. And we found an empty lot, which we bought. And then we started on the project initially thinking about building a townhouse or 2 townhouses. As we got into it, the neighbor that owned, she tore down a house, owned a couple parcels, wanted to get out. So she offered to sell me the property. So we bought that property as well, and expanded the project to the 12-unit project we now submitted. Trying to do something nice because it is personally for us to live in. Eventually when I retire, I plan on coming as well. So I'm going to let why they want to live in Cincinnati and in Mount Adams and why they want to do this project.
Okay.
So, Athena?
Yes, thank you. My name's Athena, as I said before. This is my sister, Anna. Hello, everyone. I'm going to speak for a few minutes because I want to clarify our passion for Cincinnati and for this project on behalf of my sister and I by sharing our story. So thank you in advance for your time. I'm a senior at the University of Houston, which is where I'm currently calling in from, and I graduate in 2 weeks. The reason I'm here today and the reason my dad and I initially took on this project is because after graduation, we'll be moving to Cincinnati to start work at Procter & Gamble, and I hope that one day I can live on Oregon Street. When I tell people what I'm doing after graduation, they often ask why move to Cincinnati. I was born in Geneva, Switzerland, and I grew up moving around Europe because of my mom's work. But when people ask me my favorite place I've lived, it's not Amsterdam or Geneva or Athens. It's the lesser known town of Cincinnati, Ohio. I first moved to Cincinnati when I was just 5 years old and had the pleasure of living there for 3 years while my mom worked at Procter & Gamble. It was totally foreign to me at first, but my family and I were immediately welcomed by the amazing community, beautiful environment, and outstanding quality of life that Cincinnati had to offer. When we had to move back overseas 3 years later, I just didn't want to leave. My sister and I loved it so much that we convinced our parents to bring us back every summer, flying all the way from Europe to see our dearest friends. So 10 years later, in 2023, when I sat in my dorm at the University of Houston as a freshman, deciding what summer internship to accept, I knew that there was only one city that I'd want to spend the summer in, Cincinnati. So that day, I accepted an offer to join Procter & Gamble as a brand management intern at their headquarters, in the heart of downtown of the Queen City. It was a dream come true to go back to the place that I loved so much, working at my dream company and enjoying another summer in this amazing city. In 2024, I came back for another internship at P&G, and I was delighted to accept an offer to return full-time to the company as a brand manager. I start in August, and I'm over the moon to be working my dream job in my favorite city. My sister, who is also graduating, has accepted an offer at 8451, just down the street. We'll be moving to Cincinnati together this summer and living together, which is truly a dream come true. So you're probably all wondering, how does this relate to 375 Oregon Street? Well, in the summer of 2023, when I sat down at my desk for the first time in P&G's headquarters on 6th Street, I looked out the window and I stared out at a hillside that faced our building. It was covered in townhouses and homes overlooking the river, but I noticed a vacant lot. That hillside was Mount Adams, and I didn't know it yet, but I was staring right at 375 Oregon Street, what could one day be my future home. Throughout my summers interning in Cincinnati, I got to explore downtown and learn of the beautiful community that is Mount Adams. On intern housing tours, my colleagues raved about the walkable community with European-style living, bars, and restaurants easily accessible, and all of that just steps away from our own headquarters. It seemed clear that there could be no better place to live for someone like me. And so I told my dad that I need a place to live when I moved to Cincinnati for work. He started looking at lots that would be near our work and discovered an opening on Oregon Street. One day he took me to visit, and I was shocked to realize I could see right to my own office window. I had stared at the opposite side of this view countless times from my very own desk, and I knew that it would be the perfect place for me to start my career and my new life in Cincinnati. Since 2023, when my father pitched this idea, my sister and I have been along for every step of the way, reviewing every phase of planning, taking trips to visit the lot, giving our input for how we want this project to blend with the Mount Adams community and be a wonderful place for people to live. My dad has worked tirelessly to make this not just a building, but a beautiful, well-made, functional, and inviting home. Because it's not just a building. It's a home for his family and eventually for himself and our mom when they retire. It's a true family project and a labor of love for us. At the same time, we know that Cincinnati, like so many cities, needs more quality housing, especially in central, accessible neighborhoods. If approved, this project would not only allow my sister and I to live walking distance to our offices, but also contribute to the continued vitality and vibrancy of Mount Adams. If we are able to build these apartments, I would live walking distance to my work in the most desirable community in the city, and others could say the same. I'd be proud to point out my home from my office window when my colleagues ask where I live. And I'm certain if we can build this project to its full potential, that anyone who has the pleasure of living in an apartment on 375 Oregon Street will be proud to say that they do. So thank you for taking the time to listen to our story, and I hope you will allow us to make this beautiful addition to the Mount Adams skyline. It would be a dream come true. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Athena.
Thank you, Athena.
So I'm going to keep us moving here. Let me pull up a document and share screen. Are we seeing the screen?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So a couple of quick slides here just to give an overview of the project, and I'm going to highlight the three areas of concern, relief, and I believe Matt is then going to pick it up from zoning to discuss things further. So just orienting everybody from a site standpoint, we kind of all know where we are here on Oregon Street. The Highland Tower sits directly behind us. Balm Street is down below. I see we have some neighbors there on screen, and then Kilgore on down. So as was just beautifully explained from Athena, I think everybody kind of knows where we are and what we're talking about. Getting down into the weeds a little bit from the zoning standpoint, this is where RM7 sort of starts and stops from an overlay standpoint, and then we go down to an RM2. And for that purpose, from a zoning standpoint, it's just a matter of we are in the high density build area versus the lower or mid density building area further down on Oregon Street. In general, just to give an orientation of how this sits in plan and on the site, Oregon Street is to the top of the screen up here. The general layout and massing of the building in plan is noted on the drawing down to the following the sort of thick line. It's a little, if you're not familiar with the building, which is still in design phase, but obviously geared towards zoning approval first. We actually have three areas of entry into the building, each of which accesses 4 different units, which will then conform to the building code as far as the number of egress units are permitted to have in one avenue. So essentially, we have a large building mass overall, and it breaks down into two sort of bigger towers that steps off the street, and then one where you descend down between the masses and access 4 units down below. From that standpoint, this shows, sort of removes a few things and shows the overlay. This highlights 2 of the conditions of relief. One is the rear yard setback. All the calculations noted here. So we're looking for the original position would have placed us here, which would have aligned more up with here, but certainly lost some space over here. So the averaging of this through the Hillside Overlay District and both our staff with Brian Raymond and Matt Lascheid from the zoning department, their algorithms, whatever they were, these were the numbers that were calculated and approved. So we're looking for a setback that puts us into the zone so that we can build to here underneath. And then from a parking standpoint, another one of the items listed, the proposed aggregate width located here at 64 feet. I'll show you in a moment why we think that should be allowed. And it's really because how we're trying to make the buildings sit themselves on the street and how they address the street. So a little bit of an overview, just an axonometric. Obviously, the proposed envelope located here, pretty abstract early on, but this is about where the zoning heights and so forth are located and requested. You'll note behind us the Highland Tower and stepping down to, I believe those are condominiums down there on Oregon Street. From a street standpoint, to highlight again where we took what is essentially a larger building that is a mass, where the primary floor that is shared is the first floor off street. We've broken that down into 4 different access points for the vehicular condition, of which, and the issue of the dimension, the 64-foot dimension on the parking and drive access, this is an accumulative. But we actually feel there's an advantage here, because where we set the massings now as we break it down to where it feels more like a row house on the street to match up with some of the other ones further down in a different district. And we broke up the parking access points as if they were singular row housing conditions. So again, 3 points of entry across the front. The center one goes down between and accesses the 2 lower levels of the units, and then the 2 sides that go in and go up, 4 units per entry. A little bit of a developing section on the sides, so you can see where the setback takes you as far as the pullback goes. This is our request. We feel from a sectional standpoint and the buildability standpoint, it actually is quite compatible with how the building steps down. This gets into our 3rd issue, which is excavation. You can see the 2 sides of the site, the first purchase site and the second purchase site, are slightly different in the slope, which obviously anybody here that's been out there would see. So you can kind of see the originary condition of the slope going down here. It's already excavated, so to speak. So I think it's 29 feet of cumulative cut seems a little odd to sort of calculate, but point being is that this is a very buildable site. Our geotechnical report calculates that we probably don't even need piles. We can probably do this with spread footings, but that will be fully engineered and calculated out. So this is the one section, obviously off the street here. We have the garage access and the amenity floor as mentioned, and then you go up in certain units and then you go down in certain units. The other half of the site is slightly different, and yes, we are excavating a bit more in order to land this, again, but with no problems and full accessibility as far as we can certainly see and know. And just a few quick shots of a physical model we actually have in the office. We did have Steve and the neighborhood council here to see these models so they could understand how we're actually sort of molding the site and the buildings so that they conform. The bulk of the site, a little of the buildings back here are a little heavy. They stay actually in line with these houses as you come down Oregon. The whole massing of the building aligns directly with Highland Tower and feels pretty compatible as it molds itself into the street. We do taper the top floors back. So per the Hillside Overlay, it actually does conform and feel as if it's part of the site based on all of those original concepts and values based in the Hillside Overlay District. And then you move on down and access coming out the lower levels. And then just the last thing I'll show for now is just a few different shots of how the street works, what you're seeing from below. And there you go. So stop sharing. And I think, Matt, maybe you were going to step in here.
I can. Typically, Mr. Sturkey, I'll let you respond.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I think unless there's anything else from the applicant team or the owners, we'll typically move to public comment and then to Matt.
Got it.
Okay. So I think that we had Mr. Weinstein, who maybe wanted to provide any comments. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes, so what is the variance that's requested? I know, is there any variance for the height? It's not variance, right? It's the back.
Yeah, so let me actually then allow Matt to lay that out for us. Just some table setting on what the actual requests for relief are here.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So generally, as outlined, it's in a residential multifamily zoning district, which is a fairly high density multifamily district that allows taller buildings with several units. It's also in the Hillside Overlay District. So with that, there are additional design parameters for new construction related to setbacks and the amount of excavation that is required for the project in the hillside. The setbacks in the hillside are determined by averaging the two setbacks of the buildings on either side. And I can share, I have our staff report here. Let's see here. All right. Is everyone able to see our staff report?
Yep.
Okay. So okay, so here's a matrix, and then here's the site plan, which is probably the most helpful. The zoning code requires that the rear yard setback be the average of those on either side. So we take this on the right or the east, and this on the left or the west, and we average them. And this site faces kind of an odd condition where there's this bump out that goes into the property. So the rear yard setback for a unusually shaped lot is the average, which Mr. Messerly and I determined was here based on how much width was at the deepest point versus the shallowest point. And then we measure the average of these two setback numbers. And I believe that it's shown on this red line here is the average. And they're requesting a variance to let the building go further into the backyard than the zoning code would typically allow. I think it's worth noting that it's, in practicality, it's about in line with the building to the east, but there's somewhat of an unusual condition with this bump out here that skews that dimension. And then also there is relief being requested for the amount of excavation and fill for the project. The Hillside Overlay District limits excavation and fill to 8 feet before a hearing is required. And then during the Hillside review hearing, we review the project for compliance with the Hillside Development Guidelines. One of the main emphasis is that the building should be stepped to follow the natural topography. Both the foundation should be stepped down the hill so you're not excavating large amounts of earth or filling large amounts of earth and building a big retaining wall. Generally, the building should be designed to fit onto the earth where it's proposed. And our analysis has determined that that is the case. You can see that although it's a cumulative 29 feet, which sounds like a lot, that is to be expected for a project of this size. And as outlined earlier, large multifamily buildings are permitted in this district. And generally, the foundation has been designed to step with the hillside as is intended by the zoning code. And then the third piece of zoning relief that's being required is the aggregate driveway width of 64 feet. The zoning code typically says that you can only have a driveway or total number of driveways that are 20 feet. And a variance is being requested to allow the applicant to have 4 separate driveways that are 16 feet each. And this creates a condition that looks kind of like a series of row houses, which is a common condition in Mount Adams and would otherwise be permitted if each one was on its own parcel. However, that's not the case here. But it would be allowed if they were on their own parcel, and we've identified there are several properties in the immediate vicinity that have a condition very similar to what's being proposed here, with multiple driveways up against each other. The only difference is that there are property lines running between them, which is not the case here. But what's being requested would result in buildings that look like a series of row homes that looks like a series of row homes that would be similar to other homes found in Mount Adams. And the variance just is to allow for each one to have a driveway and a garage, which is a common condition and would be permitted if there were property lines running down the middle.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Mr. Weinstein, hopefully that helps clarify the relief that they're requesting here today. Did you want to add some comments?
So I'm for the project, but not for the, on a minimal footprint without the rear variance. I think it should, you know, I'm concerned about the landslides and the minimal force of the building against adjacent properties. So I think the project is great, but I don't want to extend it in the rear any further than it's permitted without the variances.
Got it. So your concern is with the rear setback
Right, and the minimal footprint.
Got it. Okay. All right, and that's mostly based on your fears about hillside stability, is that
right? It's happened all around here. Just recently, you know, several landslides, and on our street particularly.
All right. Anything else you'd like to add?
That's it for right now.
Okay. I'm gonna go a little out of order and I'll give MMA Design or MMA at McInturf. If you want to respond to that before I go to Mr. Vogel, I think that just might be a more logical way to, if you wanted to respond to that comment or address that at all, give you that opportunity before going to Mr. Vogel.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think get this up here. Oh, there it is. I number one, I understand a concern. We're very familiar with the slippages that are going on. We know the coat plane, which is a standard elevational condition throughout the city. So we're well aware of building on hillsides in Cincinnati can be tricky. We do, I mean, I would first just say this will be fully professionally engineered by a very substantial firm that's quite capable to make this happen. And the reason for a lot of the width is actually to get better stability because we're able to spread it out a little bit, get some deepness in there, and actually then take advantage to occupy those spaces. So structurally, despite the fact that we're well aware of what's going on there, we're even in our analysis through our geotech, and forgive us because he had an emergency this morning and cannot be here. We've even calculated again that we may not need piles to drive down further, but if required, we're certainly prepared to do that. The actual layout of the plan is geared toward, I guess, probably, well, structurally, we will have primary walls running in this direction, which is perpendicular to the loading of any sort of slippage from a retainage standpoint. So there's really nothing we have too big of concerns about at all, knowing where we are. Again, pulling the base out actually allows us to utilize more of the site, certainly. But there, number one, in plan, as Matt mentioned, it does conform in general to about as far out as the building next door is. And then as we taper at the top, it's sort of, if this gets a little greater over here, We taper that out from the top so that there are views coming out of here you actually see over to the river and so forth. So we're pretty confident that structurally well, we're very confident there will be no slippage on this. It's actually easier to go deeper and build out that lower level than it is not to.
Okay. I'm gonna shift over to the Mount Adams Civic Association and their representative, Mr. Vogel. Did you want to add some public comment here?
First, I'd like to thank both the owner and the architectural firm. They've been very accommodating and meeting with us a number of times and responding to our questions and some concerns. To be brief, we have no objection to the project as presented, with one caveat, and it again came up today. And Mr. Rashid was talking about this with respect to that nominal variance for the driveways, because the number is somewhat startling, and we wanted it referenced, if we could, in any written report or order in response to this hearing, that this property, as is mentioned in the staff report, is actually a unified 3 lots. So with respect to the driveway, we're talking about property lines. There were property lines there. I don't think they've officially been erased, but they are gone, and that allows this project to be presented. But each one of the 3 lots could have had 20 feet on it. So I would request on behalf of the Civic Association that the anomaly of the fact that this is now one parcel, it does create that anomaly with respect to the driveways, again, which we are in favor of, because of course, providing off-street parking, that's a very densely, in fact, a narrower street, and parking on Oregon is very constrained right now. So there are reasons for what is being designed. We understand it, and with respect to the entire mix, we have no objection. We do want the number of the variance for the driveway to be reflecting that it's fact anomaly of consolidating 3 lots, and to still be measured by 20 feet because of one lot. Well, it was 3 lots and would have had 60 feet. I don't know if that could be mentioned, Mr. Sturkey, but it's a presidential value matter that is of concern to us. But in substance, again, the Civic Association has no objection to the project.
Got it. So to be clear, no objection to granting the variance, just some recognition within the approval that the consolidation of the parcels created an anomaly where you would not like the same amount of driveway width to be looked at equally with other projects. Is that right?
Yes, to be blunt, another developer, we don't want them coming in and saying that this project allowed for a 44-foot driveway.
Right.
It does not. So that is a concern.
Okay. Understood. Anything else you want to add?
No, again, just to register our position and no opposition.
Okay, great. Thank you for your testimony. And as always, thanks to Mount Adams Civic Association for taking the time to look into these projects and provide their perspective. Okay, I'm going to, unless I want to ensure, Mr. Edwards, you did not want to provide any testimony, correct? You're just observing.
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank
great. Sure. All right, Mr. Lashad, anything else you wanted to add to your earlier comments about the project?
Sure. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. To Mr. Vogel, I agree with your analysis. This is kind of an anomaly, and that's when a project comes in and requests a variance. That's when we look at things on a case-by-case basis. And the fact that it is a wider lot that was, the result of a consolidation is a good point, and something that we also considered internally. And certainly this would not set a precedent for someone to come in and build a 44-foot or something wider driveway in the future. This is a unique circumstance, and that is why we looked at it in more detail and are recommending approval based on the design of this project.
Yeah, Mr. Vogel.
I appreciate it, Mr. Scheid. Again, you would know better than I, but I'm seeing this, that when they will be reading your report, and then they will read, if again, one is issued here by the zoning hearing examiner, they will just look at numbers without providing context. And that was just the point that we wanted to have the record reflect the unusual nature of the lot and how it results in this particular anomaly and the way it's having to be mentioned in the application.
Understood.
I can say that technically this is all part of the record, so that it's already been captured via this, and if this were to be approved, I think that's a discussion that would have to be included in my official decision, which will also be a part of the record. Matt, anything else?
Let's see. I think we talked a little bit about the rear setback variance. Generally, the maximum building envelope and the setbacks in the hillside overlay district understand that lots are often unusually shaped, and there are views that are significant and sometimes from public viewing areas. So if we're looking at setback variances, we want to make sure that the building is not going to obstruct views from public parks or public viewing areas, which is not the case for this project. And generally, the intent is that the buildings be in line with the other buildings that are next to them, which, as discussed, this building is following approximately the same rear setback as the building to the east. So for that reason, staff recommends approval of the maximum building envelope relief for the rear yard setback.
Matt,
And
can I ask you on that setback? I mean, I know you're just looking at the, what is it, the one or two properties that are adjacent to make that calculation? Or is it just only the two adjacent properties on either side?
that is a good question. In the hillside overlay district, the code requires that we look at only the two adjacent properties on either side. So the one to the right and the one to the left, and average them.
And I know that as you go further down the street, the zoning district might change, but I mean, how does this compare on a sort of a broader scope to the rear setbacks along Oregon Street? Do you have any sense of that?
They're somewhat varied, but you know, I'm looking on Cages now. As you go further east, there are several properties that have a lesser rear yard setback. The ones, yeah, where your hand is, yeah. Yeah.
Right. Thanks.
Generally, in a larger context, the proposed building is, I feel, compatible with the rear yard setbacks. It is not significantly out of scale with other buildings in that respect. And then lastly, we look at the excavation and fill that's required. As noted earlier, generally the zoning code limits that to 8 feet before a hillside review hearing is required. And at that point, we look at, is the building designed to step with the hillside? Is the building designed to minimize excavation and fill? So there's no, large cuts into the hillside, no large retaining walls being proposed. Sometimes that would be the case if someone was proposing a parking area that needed to be flat, then they would level it out with a big retaining wall at the end. That's not the case here. Parking has been designed within the building and accessible from grade. There are some excavations required for the foundation, but they step down naturally with the hillside. There are no substantially large excavations or amount of fill that's being required here. And so our staff's position is that this project aligns with the hillside development guidelines, and we recommend approval.
Is there a proposal for any retaining walls as a part of this project?
Not that I would call a retaining wall. I mean, there's some site work at the back for a patio, but I wouldn't call that a retaining wall. I'll let the applicant add, if they want to respond to that.
Thanks, Matt. Mr. McIntyre.
Yeah, I think we've got a small patio, as Matt mentioned, down at the bottom with a very minimal, probably it might even be a turn down slab that would require to sort of get enough depth there as it comes out the bottom. That's all on grade, so none of that's in the envelope. From the top standpoint, our primary structure is running perpendicular. From a fill standpoint, we will end up with some retainage capability coming along parallel to the street, certainly, but because we have so many walls running vertically to it, it's pretty minimal and certainly is not a standalone retaining. It's part of the basement structure.
Okay, got it. And it looks like is there some existing vegetation that's going to need to be removed, or any mature trees that are going to be removed as a
No,
part of this project?
we took care of that this past summer. So the site is cleaned and ready to go. We've done test borings on both of the old and the new site. So that's how our geotechnical report was formed, and they were able to access the drilling down into the lower portion of the site fairly easy.
All right, I don't think that I have any other questions right now. Mr. McInturf or anyone else associated with the project, if you'd like to make any remarks in response to anything you heard from the public, or from Mr. Lashide, or any other comments in closing or otherwise, now is the time.
I mean, we don't have to do anything particular. I think really I think to make the point, this is a quality client, a quality build. We're not trying to throw up something quick. It's a very large project, a very big investment, and not taken lightly. At the same time, it's been a pleasure working with our client, as you can imagine, hearing from Athena and both Eris and the whole family. Actually, they're a Cincinnati sort of commit, and it's really great, and you don't always get that. So that part's been a pleasure. It's been a long haul. We've been at this for over a year, so we're pretty confident about what we have before you. Matt's been great to work with at the city as well, so I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, great. Unless there's anything else, I think we can leave it at that. I have a fair amount of information that I want to review here before making a formal decision. When I make that formal decision, I will put that in writing, and then ultimately into a PDF that I will share with everybody who's in the hearing here today. So you'll have that decision really just moments after it's complete. I'll send that via email unless anyone would like to request a written decision in the mail. If the project is approved, I think Mr. McInturf, you've been through this process before, but Matt Lashide would be able to approve the zoning at that time, and you'd be able to take the next steps. If not, well, whether it's approved or denied, all of this is able to be appealed within 30 days. So that is another part of the process. Any questions about any of that before we sign off here today? Okay, if you have any questions about procedure, I'm happy to answer those as we move forward, or from the applicant, if you just want a status update on the decision, happy to provide that as well. I can't take in any more testimony, so if anyone wants to provide additional statements or evidence, I can no longer do that after the hearing is closed, but I'm happy to address any procedural questions. Okay. Well, thank you all again for your time, your testimony here today. You'll be hearing from me within the next 2 weeks, and hope you have